You know, I've always had a thing for old, abandoned places, especially the ones that come with chilling legends. So it shouldn't come as a surprise that I found myself tangled up in a nightmare at the very place I used to love as a child, the old Millington Mansion. I grew up in a small, sleepy town, surrounded by thick forests and a fair share of ghost stories. The Millington Mansion, an imposing, rambling estate, sat atop a hill just on the outskirts of town. As kids, my friends and I would dare each other to sneak into the overgrown, forgotten garden and spy on the mansion's eerie facade. Back then, it was all just innocent fun, the thrill of trespassing. One summer, I received news that the mansion was going to be demolished, making way for a new housing development. It was like a piece of my childhood was about to disappear, so I felt a compelling urge to revisit the place that held so many memories. As I approached the mansion on a cloudy afternoon, a sense of foreboding washed over me. The sky had an uncanny shade of grey, and the air was heavy with an eerie silence that gnawed at my nerves. It was as if the very atmosphere was trying to warn me away. The gate, once padlocked, was hanging open, its rusty chains swaying in the breeze. I hesitated for a moment, my heart pounding, as memories of my childhood trespassing adventures flooded my mind. I shrugged them off and stepped through the gate. The tall weeds and tangled vines seemed to welcome me, as if the mansion had been waiting for my return. The old house had lost its luster over the years. Its once grand facade was now a crumbling relic, its windows shattered and its walls draped in ivy. In the dim light, I couldn't help but feel a sense of nostalgia mixed with unease. I ventured inside, my footsteps echoing through the empty, echoing halls. The silence was deafening, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Dust-covered furniture and faded wallpaper were all that remained, hinting at the life that once thrived here. As I explored further, my footsteps echoing through the hollow mansion, I came upon a room that held a gruesome surprise. There, on the floor, lay an ancient journal. It was filled with the ramblings of a previous explorer, someone who had visited this place with the same curiosity as mine. The journal spoke of strange occurrences, of whispers in the night, and the feeling of being pursued by unseen figures. It was like a veil of darkness had settled over the mansion, and the person who had written the journal had fallen victim to its malevolent presence. I couldn't help but shiver as I read the words that echoed my own eerie experiences. Despite the dread that had settled upon me, I continued to explore, each step leading me deeper into the mansion's mysteries. I found myself in a narrow corridor that led to an ornate, dusty door. I pushed it open, revealing a room that sent a shiver down my spine. In the center of the room stood an ornate, full-length mirror. Its glass was warped and tarnished, reflecting a grotesque, distorted version of myself. It was like a portal to a nightmare realm, and I couldn't tear my eyes away. I felt a sinister pull, like the mirror was beckoning me to step through, to cross the threshold into the unknown. My reflection in the mirror began to change, contorting into a grotesque, shadowy figure. Panic surged through me as I stumbled back from the cursed mirror. It was then that I realized I was not alone. The mansion, this once beloved place, was not abandoned at all. From the shadows emerged a group of spectral figures, their eyes empty voids, their faces twisted in pain and rage. They moved towards me, their movements ghostly and unnatural, like marionettes under a malevolent puppeteer's control. I turned and fled, the mansion's oppressive atmosphere pressing down on me like a lead weight. But it was like the very walls of the house conspired against me, shifting and rearranging themselves to keep me trapped inside. The once familiar layout of the mansion had become a maze of endless corridors and dead ends. My heart raced, and my breath came in short, frantic gasps as I continued to flee from the relentless spirits that pursued me. It was like a never-ending nightmare, and I couldn't escape the feeling that I was caught in a web of darkness, a web spun by the malevolent forces that had taken root in the mansion. In a desperate bid for freedom, I found myself back in the room with the cursed mirror. The spectral figures closed in on me, their eyes burning with a malevolent fire. With no other options left, I reached out and touched the mirror. A searing pain shot through me, and the world around me seemed to shatter. I found myself back outside, standing before the dilapidated mansion, as if I had never set foot inside. The malevolent spirits were gone, and the mansion was silent once more. I stumbled away from the old Millington Mansion, my heart still pounding with fear. I couldn't help but wonder if it was the mansion itself that had lured me back, that had drawn me into its sinister grasp, or if the legends were true and the place was truly cursed. The experience had left me with a chilling realization. The past should remain buried, especially when it comes to places like the old Millington Mansion. Some things are best left as memories, and I would never forget the horrors I had encountered within those decaying walls. It was a lesson I'd carry with me, a reminder that some legends are not to be taken lightly, and some places are best left abandoned. Hey, I've got a story that'll send shivers down your spine. It all started with a trip to an old airport, one I'd always heard about as a kid, but never visited. This isn't your usual horror tale. It's a real-life nightmare that happened to me, and I've got to get it off my chest. So there's this place called Willowbrook Airport. It's out in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by dense woods, and you'd never know it was there unless someone told you. In its heyday, Willowbrook was a buzzing hub of activity. They say it was a vital link during World War II, with pilots and cargo planes coming and going, day and night. Fast forward to a few weeks ago, my friend Mark and I decided to check it out. The airport had been abandoned for years, and our curiosity finally got the best of us. It was a warm, sunny day, and we figured it would be a fun little adventure. As we approached the place, I couldn't help but notice how the air suddenly grew colder, and a heavy feeling settled in my chest. My instincts screamed at me to turn back, but I didn't listen. Instead, I followed Mark, and we made our way onto the cracked runway, weeds growing through the asphalt like nature was trying to reclaim it. The old control tower loomed above us, its windows shattered, and the entrance covered in graffiti. The entire airport was silent, except for the eerie creaking of a long-forgotten windsock flapping in the breeze. It was as if the place was holding its breath, waiting for something. Mark and I explored the main terminal building first. It was a dim, dusty place, strewn with discarded luggage and torn-up flight schedules. The air was musty and thick, like it hadn't been disturbed in decades. We climbed a rickety staircase that led to the control tower, and that's when things started to get strange. The stairs creaked and groaned under our weight, but as we ascended, I could have sworn I heard distant chatter, like a radio signal playing in the background. I exchanged a puzzled glance with Mark, who was just as spooked as I was. There was no power, no working radios, and yet we could hear it. The voices grew louder as we reached the control room, and my heart raced. Something was very wrong. When we finally pushed open the door to the control room, what we saw sent a chill down our spines. It was as if the room had been frozen in time. The old-fashioned radio equipment was humming to life, and a ghostly figure in an old pilot's uniform was seated at the control panel. He didn't look at us, just continued talking into the microphone. I couldn't believe my eyes. Mark and I exchanged another terrified glance. We watched in silence as the pilot's monologue grew more frantic. He talked about a storm, a crash, and something else, something darker. It was like he was reliving a terrifying moment from the past. The whole scene felt unreal, like a glitch in the fabric of time. Suddenly, the figure turned to us with hollow eyes. "You shouldn't be here," he said, his voice a spectral whisper, and then he vanished, leaving nothing but the hum of static in his wake. We stumbled out of that control room, shaken to our cores, But we weren't about to let it end there. We needed answers. As we continued our exploration, we found an old photograph in the airport's records room, showing the very pilot we had seen, his name etched below the picture. We discovered he was the sole survivor of a crash that occurred on this runway during a fierce storm in the 40s. Everyone else on board had perished. The more we dug, the more we realized that Willowbrook Airport was cursed, frozen in time, and haunted by the spirits of the past. We couldn't just walk away from this mystery. We needed to understand what was happening. As night fell, we returned to the control tower, determined to uncover the truth. The eerie radio transmission began, but this time we were ready. We asked questions, hoping for answers. The pilot's responses were fragmented and cryptic, but we could piece together the story. He had been on a cargo plane carrying a mysterious and valuable artifact. The storm had hit, and the plane went down on the very runway where we now stood. The pilot had survived the crash, but the artifact had been lost, scattered across the forest in the wreckage. It was a relic of incredible power, and the storm had unleashed its dark energies, trapping the souls of everyone involved. Mark and I exchanged a glance, realizing that the only way to break the curse was to find the scattered pieces of the artifact and return them to their rightful place. We had no choice. The pilot's voice grew more desperate, and the static intensified as he reached out to us. So, with the pilot's guidance, we ventured into the forest, following the spectral remnants of the plane's wreckage. It was a treacherous journey, but the spirits of the crash victims guided us, and after hours of searching, we found the lost pieces of the artifact buried deep within the earth. As we placed the final piece back on the runway, a blinding light filled the night sky, and the entire airport trembled. The pilot's voice in the control room grew calm, grateful, and he thanked us for breaking the curse. With that, the radio fell silent. The storm that had been brewing throughout the night finally broke, and we stood in the pouring rain, watching as the airport slowly crumbled into dust, fading away like a forgotten memory. The spirits had been freed, and their restless souls could finally find peace. As Mark and I walked away from the site, we couldn't help but feel a sense of closure, a shared experience that bound us together. We had ventured into the heart of a cursed location, but in the end, we had set free the spirits of the past and given them the peace they deserved. Now, I'm sharing this story with you because sometimes the most chilling tales are the ones that happen to real people. It's a reminder that some places hold secrets that are better left undisturbed, and that not all curses can be broken. So, the next time you hear of an old abandoned location, think twice before you decide to explore, because you never know what you might awaken. You ever wonder what's lurking in the shadows when everyone else is asleep, and you're the only one patrolling an empty, dimly lit office building in the middle of the night? I thought my late-night gig as a security guard would be uneventful, but it turned into a real-life horror story I won't ever forget. Let's rewind a bit. It all started when I took a job as the night shift security guard at Richmond Office Tower. Nestled in the heart of the city, this place was a massive skyscraper that looked pretty ordinary by day, but by night, it transformed into something out of a nightmare. The rumors about this building being cursed had always swirled around the city, but I'd never paid them much attention. I needed the money, and it seemed like an easy enough gig. Patrol the empty floors, keep an eye on the cameras, and call it a night. Piece of cake, right? On my very first night, as I strolled through the vacant, dimly lit hallways, I couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. The air felt heavy, and the silence was deafening. I shook it off, thinking it was just my nerves getting the best of me, but the feeling wouldn't go away. My shift was uneventful. For the most part, I'd make my rounds, check the surveillance cameras, and occasionally have a quick chat with another night guard, Henry, who manned the building next door. He'd been working these night shifts for years and told me all the classic ghost stories about the building. with its dark history of suicides, failed businesses, and rumored hauntings. The real creepiness started on the third night. I was on the 23rd floor, peering through the massive windows of the city lights below when I saw something move. At first, I brushed it off as a figment of my imagination, but then it happened again. A shadowy figure, silhouetted against the city's glow. My heart pounded in my chest as I approached, my flashlight's beam trembling as I inched closer. But when I reached the spot, there was nothing there, just an empty, eerie office. I chalked it up to exhaustion and spent the rest of the night on edge. Each time I checked a darkened corridor, I could have sworn I heard faint whispers and soft footsteps behind me. The thought that I might not be alone sent shivers down my spine. A few nights later, the strange occurrences took a more disturbing turn. I was reviewing the surveillance footage in the security room when I spotted something I couldn't explain. A security camera on the 12th floor captured a woman in a tattered dress, her long hair obscuring her face. She drifted in and out of view, leaving a trail of smeared, wet footprints. I zoomed in, my heart pounding, and there she was, looking directly into the camera. Her eyes were empty, devoid of life or any trace of humanity. I watched as she moved silently through the dark corridor, disappearing into the shadows. That image was etched into my mind. In a panic, I radioed Henry, who reassured me it was just a glitch in the camera system. But I knew what I saw. That woman was as real as you and me, and I couldn't shake the feeling that she was tied to the building's cursed history. The nights grew longer, and my anxiety skyrocketed. I felt like I was spiraling into madness. Shadows danced in the corners of my vision, and strange noises echoed through the empty building. I'd often hear footsteps echoing down the halls, but when I investigated, there was no one there. One night, as I was patrolling the 15th floor, I heard a faint, distant voice calling my name. I couldn't tell where it was coming from, but the sound sent a chill down my spine. My instincts screamed at me to run, to leave this place behind. But I couldn't abandon my job. As I made my way back to the security room, I couldn't help but wonder if there was something sinister at play, something that was drawing me deeper into the cursed history of Richmond Office Tower. I had to get to the bottom of it, and my search for answers led me to the building's archives. The dusty records reveal a history of tragedy and despair, suicides, bankruptcies, and a string of failed businesses that had occupied the tower over the years. It was as if the building itself had a way of devouring its occupants, sucking their hopes and dreams dry. One name stood out in the archives: Emily Richmond, the original owner of the building. She had gone mad after her husband's death, believing that his spirit was trapped within the tower. Legend had it that she had taken her own life within the very walls of the office tower. My investigation led me to the tower's basement, where I uncovered an old locked room filled with dusty relics and decaying mementos. Amid the ruins, I found a journal that belonged to Emily Richmond. Her words were filled with grief, guilt, and a desperate desire to free her husband's spirit from the cursed building. It was then that it hit me. The spirits that haunted Richmond Office Tower were not malevolent but tormented. Emily's husband, and perhaps others, were trapped here, their souls unable to find rest. The curse that had plagued this place was born from their agony. Armed with this newfound knowledge, I knew I had to help them find peace. I performed a ritual to communicate with the spirits, seeking to understand their plight and offer them solace. The spirits revealed the source of their torment and their longing to be reunited with their loved ones. But there was a twist I hadn't anticipated. The spirits were not the only ones trapped within the cursed building. As the ritual unfolded, my own body grew cold and my vision blurred. The spirits had found a way to bind me to the tower, ensuring that I would never leave. Now I continue to walk the darkened halls of Richmond Office Tower, forever linked to its tragic history. I've become a guardian of the lost souls, helping them find their way to the afterlife. I often hear their whispers and feel their presence, but I've accepted my fate. As I share this story with you, remember that there are places in this world where the line between reality and the supernatural blurs, where the past and the present are intertwined in a web of tragedy and despair. Richmond's office tower is one such place, and its curse is a reminder that sometimes, even in the most ordinary settings, darkness can lurk just around the corner.